The scanner had seen approximately 3,000 species pass through its sensors in the past month alone, and not once, not even when that Metherian diplomat walked through with what turned out to be a live plasma grenade in his digestive sac, had it ever made a sound quite like this. Autumn stood in the scanning booth, still holding her half-empty coffee cup, watching the machine have what could only be described as a mechanical seizure. Lights flashed in colors she was reasonably certain didn't exist in normal space. Alarms wailed in frequencies that made her teeth itch. Holographic warnings materialized in the air around her, cycling through what had to be every known language in the galaxy, and a few that probably weren't. She said, addressing no one in particular. Is this normal? The answer came in the form of Nal Moth, the station's security chief, who materialized through the crowd with the kind of speed that seemed physically improbable for a being made entirely of sentient crystal. His faceted surface reflected the scanner's emergency lights, turning him into a mobile disco ball of panic. "Step away from the scanner," Nal Moth commanded, his voice resonating like someone striking a very large, very angry wind chime. "Slowly. Keep your appendages visible." Autumn looked down at her hands. One held coffee, the other held her employee badge, which was currently displaying her absolutely terrible ID photo from 6 months ago. These appendages? Those appendages, yes. She stepped out of the booth. Around her, the usual chaos of the intergalactic transit hub had gone silent. Approximately 200 beings from 60 different species had stopped whatever they were doing to stare at her. A Clorthian merchant had frozen mid-transaction. A group of Andorian tourists had their recording devices pointed in her direction. Someone's luggage was beeping, forgotten. "What's happening?" Autumn asked, taking another sip of coffee, because if she was about to die or get arrested or both, she wanted caffeine in her system when it happened. Nal Moth was examining a holographic readout that had materialized from the scanner. His crystalline fingers moved through the data, and with each swipe, his entire body seemed to dim slightly, which Autumn had learned was the crystalline equivalent of losing color in one's face. "You are flagged," he said quietly. "Flagged for what?" "I paid my station fees. I have my work permit. I haven't smuggled anything since—" She stopped. "I mean, I haven't smuggled anything ever, obviously." "You are flagged as Precursor class." The words hung in the air. Somewhere behind her, someone dropped something that shattered. The Clorthian merchant made a sound like a tea kettle achieving consciousness. Autumn blinked. "I'm flagged as what now?" "Precursor class entity," Nal Moth repeated, and his voice had taken on the tone of someone reading their own death warrant. "Classification reserved for beings. Present during the first seeding. Cosmic age minimum. 8 million standard rotations." She looked at her coffee cup, then at Nal Moth, then back at her coffee cup, which had been dispensed from a machine that regularly gave her the wrong order and once gave someone actual motor oil. "Does this come with dental?" she asked. Nal Moth's entire body structure flickered. "Does what come with dental?" "The Precursor class thing. Because I've got a cavity that really needs attention, and my current health plan is basically just hoping nothing goes catastrophically wrong." "You are not taking this seriously." "I am taking this exactly as seriously as it deserves, which is not at all, because I am a 26-year-old graduate student from Ohio who makes 9 credits an hour scanning luggage for contraband fruit." Autumn gestured around the terminal. "Last week, I flagged a Thalaxian merchant for trying to smuggle live spiders the size of house cats. I am not a cosmic entity. I am barely a functioning adult." But Nal Moth wasn't listening anymore. He was speaking rapidly into a communication device, using terms like containment protocol and research division and potential reality-threatening scenario, which Autumn felt was a bit much for a Monday morning. Actually, was it Monday? Station time was weird. It might have been the equivalent of a Sunday, which would make this whole situation even more unfair. "I need you to come with me," Nalmoth said, and it wasn't a request. "Am I under arrest?" "You are under protective observation." That's just arrest with better marketing. 6 additional security personnel materialized from various points around the terminal. They formed a perimeter around her that was probably meant to be subtle, but absolutely wasn't. A Calarian family shuffled past, the parent units pulling their offspring closer and whispering in tones that weren't quite whispers. "Can I at least finish my coffee?" Autumn asked. Nalmoth considered this. "Is the coffee important to your physiological function?" "More than you could possibly understand." "Then yes, but walk while you drink." So she did. They moved through the terminal in a formation that drew every eye in the building. The station's main concourse was an architectural marvel of sweeping curves and transparent aluminum, offering views of the gas giant the station orbited. Usually, Autumn found it beautiful. Right now, she was mostly focused on not tripping over the 2 security guards who insisted on walking directly beside her feet. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Research Wing," Nalmoth said. "Section 12. Dr. Ralphix has been notified." "And who is Dr. Ralphix when he's at home?" "The station's lead xenoarchaeologist. He specializes in Precursor technology and ancient civilization studies." "Oh, good," Autumn muttered. "I was worried this might not become a whole thing." They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each one requiring more scanning and verification than the last. At the 3rd checkpoint, the scanner took one look at her and immediately displayed a symbol that made the guard operating it step backward so fast he collided with the wall. "She is confirmed," the guard said, his breathing apparatus wheezing. "All markers positive. Cosmic signature verified." "I don't have a cosmic signature," Autumn protested. "I have a library card and a gym membership I haven't used in 8 months." They entered a corridor she'd never seen before, all smooth white surfaces and lighting that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air smelled different here, sterile and somehow older, like they'd left the normal parts of the station and entered somewhere that predated it. The research wing was exactly what she'd expected. All glass walls and complicated equipment, and people in lab coats who looked far too excited about whatever they were studying. They passed laboratories full of artifacts she couldn't identify, rooms where gravitational fields bent in ways that made her eyes hurt, and one chamber that appeared to contain a very small, very angry star. Dr. Ralphix was waiting in the largest laboratory, and he was vibrating. Literally vibrating. He was amphibious, his skin a shifting pattern of blue and green scales that caught the light, and the moment he saw Autumn, his entire body began to oscillate with what she could only assume was excitement. A cloud of moisture formed around him as he moved forward, his webbed hands clasped together. "Extraordinary," he breathed, and his voice had a wet, bubbling quality. "Absolutely extraordinary. In all my cycles of research, I never thought—" He stopped, seemed to realize he was vibrating, and made a visible effort to calm himself. "My apologies. I am Dr. Ralphix. Please, come in, sit down, make yourself comfortable." The laboratory was large enough to fit a small spacecraft. Equipment lined the walls, some of it recognizable, most of it looking like modern art had mated with a particle accelerator. In the center was a circular platform surrounded by scanning arrays. "I'm not sitting on that," Autumn said, pointing at the platform. "It is perfectly safe." That's what they said about the scanner that started this whole mess. Dr. Ralphix's eyes, large and golden and unsettlingly aware, focused on her. The scanner did not malfunction. It identified what you are, what you have always been. A tired graduate student with too much debt and too little sleep? A precursor class entity. The doctor moved to a console, his fingers dancing across controls. Holographic displays materialized, showing data that scrolled too fast for Autumn to read. Do you understand what this means? The precursors were the first great civilization. They seeded galaxies. They built the foundation upon which all current spacefaring cultures exist. They vanished 8 million rotations ago, and we have been searching for any trace of them ever since. Right, Autumn said slowly. And you think I'm one of them because your scanner had a glitch? Not a glitch. A recognition protocol, please. He gestured to the platform again. Just a few scans, non-invasive. I simply need to verify what the terminal scanner detected. Autumn looked at Nalmoth, who had taken up a position near the door. The security chief gave her a look that somehow conveyed both sympathy and implacability, despite him not having a face in the traditional sense. "If I do this, do I get the rest of the day off?" she asked. "You get hazard pay," Nalmoth offered. "Now we're talking." She stepped onto the platform. The moment her feet touched the surface, the equipment around her came to life. Beams of light, ranging from colors she could name to colors that probably didn't have names, swept over her. Holographic representations of her body appeared in the air, rotating slowly, layers peeling away to show systems and structures she definitely didn't remember from high school biology. Dr. Ralphix made a sound like a whale achieving enlightenment. "What?" Autumn demanded. "What is that sound?" "Your genetic markers," he whispered, staring at the displays. "They contain sequences from species that existed before the current galactic civilization. Your DNA has fragments from organisms that died out millions of rotations ago. You register on equipment designed to detect ancient technology. Your cellular structure resonates at frequencies associated with precursor artifacts." "Okay, but counterpoint. I'm from Ohio." "Where is Ohio?" "Earth. You know, that little planet out in the unfashionable end of the galaxy that nobody thinks about?" Dr. Ralphix's vibrating intensified. "Earth. Yes, I know of it. Classified as a developing world. Restricted contact protocols. Your species has only achieved basic faster-than-light capability within the last generation." "Right. We're the cosmic equivalent of that kid who just learned to ride a bike. So how exactly does that square with me being an ancient space god?" "That," Dr. Ralphix said, his eyes gleaming with something that looked dangerously close to religious fervor, "is precisely what we need to determine." The scanning continued. More data accumulated. And outside the laboratory, Autumn could see other people gathering. Scientists. Officials. Beings in robes that suggested either great importance or a commitment to a particular aesthetic. They all watched her through the glass walls with expressions ranging from curiosity to hunger to what looked like fear. Her coffee had gone cold. Somehow, that felt like the most tragic part of this entire situation. The tests multiplied like rumors in a small town. Dr. Ralphix brought in colleagues. Those colleagues brought in their colleagues. Within 2 hours, Autumn had been scanned, sampled, measured, and examined by no fewer than 16 different species, each one bringing their own special brand of scientific enthusiasm to the party. A Threnodian physicist tried to explain how her bioelectric field resonated with ancient technology, using terminology that sounded like someone gargling mathematics. An Ortian linguist got very excited about the structure of her speech patterns, claiming they matched computational models of how precursors might have communicated. One particularly intense researcher, whose name was mostly clicking sounds, insisted her left hand displayed the golden ratio in ways that couldn't be coincidental. "It's just a hand," Autumn said, wiggling her fingers. "I use it to hold things. Sometimes I give people the finger when they cut me off in traffic." The clicking researcher made notes with disturbing enthusiasm. Through it all, Dr. Ralphix orchestrated the chaos like a very damp conductor leading an orchestra toward madness. He compiled data, cross-referenced findings, and occasionally vibrated so hard he had to excuse himself to a moisture chamber to calm down. Autumn sat on an examination table, swinging her legs, watching her own genetic code rotate on holographic displays like the world's most invasive screensaver. "Can I ask a question?" she said to no one in particular. 12 scientists looked up simultaneously. "If I'm supposedly this ancient cosmic being, why do I need reading glasses? Why did I fail my driving test twice? Why can't I figure out how to fold a fitted sheet?" "Fascinating questions," Dr. Ralphix said, entirely missing her point. Perhaps the precursors also struggled with spatial reasoning challenges. I'm going to choose to be offended by that. A commotion at the laboratory entrance made everyone turn. A tall, impossibly thin being glided into the room, their movements suggesting they weren't entirely bound by normal gravity. They wore robes that shifted colors like oil on water, and their face, if it could be called that, was smooth and featureless, except for 2 points of light that might have been eyes. "I am Limnara," they announced, their voice resonating from somewhere other than their body. "I represent the remnant order. We have waited 3,000 generations for this moment." "Oh, good," Autumn muttered. "Cult members. That's definitely going to make this situation less weird." Limnara moved closer, those points of light fixed on her. "You mock, but you do not understand. You are the first confirmed precursor descendant we have found. The first proof that they did not simply vanish, but left pieces of themselves scattered across the cosmos. I'm not a piece. I'm a whole person. A very confused, underpaid whole person. Your confusion is understandable. Your heritage has been hidden from you. My heritage is a used car dealership in Cleveland, and a grandmother who made really aggressive casseroles." Before Limnara could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Different alarms from before, these ones deeper, more insistent. Nalmoth, who'd been standing guard near the door, suddenly straightened, his crystalline form shifting to a deeper, redder hue. "We have incoming vessels," he said, touching the communication device at what might have been his temple. "Multiple signatures. They are requesting permission to dock." "Who?" Dr. Ralphix asked. "The Ikunari Collective, the Merchant League, and a military delegation from the Core Worlds." Nalmoth paused. "Also, apparently someone from a local news network." "How did they know?" Autumn demanded. "This literally just happened." "Information moves fast," Nalmoth said grimly, "particularly information this significant." Autumn slid off the examination table. "No, absolutely not. I am not doing press. I'm not talking to merchants. I'm definitely not talking to anyone military. I just want to go back to my extremely boring job and my extremely boring apartment and pretend this day never happened." "I am afraid," Limnara said gently, That is no longer possible. You have been revealed, and revelation cannot be undone. The next 6 hours were a masterclass in bureaucratic insanity. The Econari Collective arrived first, a delegation of tall, eerily beautiful beings who immediately offered Autumn a temple, complete with worshippers, tax exemption, and what they called generous retirement benefits. They seemed genuinely confused when she turned them down. The Merchant League representatives were more direct. They wanted samples, genetic material, hair, skin cells, whatever she could provide. They offered payment that made Autumn's eyes water, then doubled it when she hesitated, then tripled it when she said no. Do you understand how much 3 million credits is? The lead merchant, a gelatinous being in a containment suit, bubbled desperately. You could purchase a small moon, several small moons. I don't want a moon. I want to not be treated like a commodity. But you are a commodity, a priceless one. The military delegation was worse. They didn't make offers. They made implications, suggestions wrapped in polite language that barely concealed threats. If Autumn was truly Precursor descended, her abilities could be studied, replicated, weaponized. For the good of galactic security, of course. Of course, Autumn repeated flatly. Because nothing says galactic security like human experimentation. The delegation leader, a scarred veteran of a species she didn't recognize, leaned forward. You are being naive. Others will come for you. Factions less polite than us. If you do not accept protection, you will find yourself vulnerable. I'll take my chances. Throughout it all, Dr. Ralphix continued his research, seemingly oblivious to the political circus forming around his laboratory. He'd been joined by a small alien named Toomey, a junior researcher whose species resembled an oversized rabbit crossed with something vaguely marsupial. She had enormous eyes, fur that shifted from gray to blue depending on the light, and an anxious energy that Autumn found deeply relatable. This is completely overwhelming, isn't it? Toomey whispered during a brief moment when the various delegations were arguing with each other instead of at Autumn. Completely, Autumn agreed. I'm sorry. This must be terrifying. Honestly, I'm too tired to be terrified. I've crossed over into a kind of exhausted acceptance. She paused. Do you think they'd notice if I just walked out? They would definitely notice. Worth asking. Toomey's nose twitched. A gesture Autumn was learning meant anxiety. Can I tell you something? Something Dr. Ralphix is still verifying? Please, give me literally any information that might explain what's happening to me. The smaller alien glanced around, then pulled up a datapad, keeping it angled away from the others. We ran your genetic markers through the comprehensive database, not just looking for precursor sequences, but looking at where else those sequences might appear. And we found matches. Lots of matches. Toomey's voice dropped even lower. 40% of human genetic samples in the database show similar markers, not as pronounced as yours, but they're there, scattered throughout your species. Autumn stared at the data scrolling across the datapad. 40%? Of humans? Yes. But Earth is classified as a restricted development world. Nobody bothers scanning you thoroughly. You're considered too primitive to warrant detailed genetic surveying. Toomey's ears flattened against her head. But if what we're seeing is accurate, humans aren't just some random species that evolved intelligence. You're Precursor descended. All of you. Or at least a significant portion of you. The implications hit Autumn like a brick wrapped in cosmic significance. So, I'm not special. I'm just the first human someone bothered to actually look at closely. Exactly. And if anyone finds out that humans in general have precursor markers, it changes everything, Toomey finished. Politically, economically, militarily. Humanity goes from being an irrelevant backwater species to being potentially the largest concentration of precursor genetics in the known galaxy. Autumn sat down. Her legs had apparently decided they were done holding her up. "Oh," she said quietly. "Oh, this is bad." "Very bad," Toomey agreed. "Does Dr. Ralphix know?" "He's still running verification. But yes, he knows. And he hasn't told anyone. He's trying to decide what to do. This kind of information, if it gets out the wrong way, could start a war." Autumn looked across the laboratory at the various delegations, still arguing, still making their cases. They thought she was unique, one special human who happened to carry ancient genetic markers. They had no idea they were looking at a preview of an entire species. And then, because the universe apparently had a sense of humor, the alarms went off again. Nalmoth materialized in the laboratory doorway, and his entire crystalline structure had shifted to a color Autumn had never seen before, something between ultraviolet panic and infrared dread. "We have a situation," he announced. "We already have several situations," Autumn pointed out. "Can we prioritize? Maybe address them in order of least to most likely to kill me?" Additional human vessels are approaching the station. 6 of them. They are responding to a signal. Dr. Ralphix looked up from his instruments, moisture dripping from his scales. "What signal? We sent no signal." "Not us," Nalmoth said grimly. "The scanner, the terminal scanner that first identified Autumn. It apparently activated ancient precursor protocols embedded in the station's foundation systems. Protocols we did not know existed. Those protocols sent out a beacon." "A beacon saying what, exactly?" Autumn asked, though she was reasonably certain she wasn't going to like the answer. Translated loosely, "Come home." The laboratory went silent. Even the various delegations stopped arguing, which was possibly the most alarming development yet. Limnara moved forward, those points of light that served as eyes blazing brighter. The station recognizes her. It knows what she is, what her species is. "My species is confused and heavily caffeinated," Autumn said. "Can we please stop assigning cosmic significance to my existence?" But nobody was listening. Dr. Ralphix was already pulling up station schematics, his webbed fingers flying across holographic controls. The beacon originated from the lower levels, sections that were sealed when the station was first constructed. We always assumed they were just unstable areas, possibly damaged during the original building process. "What if they weren't damaged?" Toomey said quietly. "What if they were locked deliberately?" The first human vessel docked 30 minutes later. Then another. Then 4 more in quick succession. They weren't military ships or research vessels. They were ordinary civilian craft. A merchant hauler, 2 passenger transports, a mining vessel, and what appeared to be a luxury yacht that had seen better decades. The humans who disembarked were equally ordinary. A merchant captain named Angela, who dealt in rare minerals. A tourist couple, Leon and Ruth, who'd been visiting the station's observation decks. A mining engineer named Tommy, who looked perpetually confused. A janitor from one of the vessels who'd apparently just followed everyone else because he thought there was free food. They all ended up in the research wing, looking around with expressions ranging from curiosity to irritation to Leon's visible concern that he'd somehow gotten involved in a timeshare presentation. "Okay," Angela said, arms crossed. "Someone want to explain why our ships got pulled to this station by what our navigation systems are calling a priority ancestral. Summons?" "Your precursor descended," Dr. Ralphix announced, vibrating with renewed enthusiasm. All of you. We need to run scans immediately. I'm descended from Irish fishermen and possibly a carnival barker, Ruth said. I don't know what a precursor is, but I'm pretty sure it's not in my family tree. Can we get paid for this? Tommy asked. Because I left a drilling operation mid-shift, and my supervisor is going to be extremely angry. Autumn watched them file toward the scanning platform. Ordinary humans with ordinary lives who'd been yanked out of their routines by ancient technology that decided today was the day to acknowledge their existence. She felt a strange kinship with these people, these confused representatives of a species that apparently carried cosmic significance without having any idea. The scans confirmed what Toomey had discovered. Every single human registered precursor markers, some more than others, but all of them triggered the same ancient recognition protocols. And that's when things got complicated. The Iconari delegation immediately tried to recruit all of them. The Merchant League started calculating the economic value of humanity as a whole, and their numbers kept getting larger until they exceeded the gross domestic product of several star systems. The military delegation went very quiet, very still, and started making encrypted communications that Nal Moth's security team couldn't fully intercept. This is a problem, Nal Moth said, stating what Autumn felt was extremely obvious. You think, she replied, if knowledge spreads that humanity carries precursor genetics, Earth becomes a target. Every faction will want access. Some will offer partnership. Others will attempt conquest. Your species is not ready for that level of galactic attention. We can barely handle local attention, Autumn agreed. Last year, we had 3 international incidents over fishing rights. Limnara had been standing apart from the chaos, silent and still. Now they moved to the center of the laboratory, and when they spoke, their voice carried a weight that made everyone stop talking. There is more you need to understand, they said. The precursors did not simply vanish. They evolved, transcended physical form. Before they did, they seeded countless worlds with their genetic legacy, hoping that their children, when they emerged, would be worthy inheritors of the cosmos. Define worthy, Angela said suspiciously. Capable of growth, of compassion, of seeing the universe as something to be explored and understood, not conquered and exploited. Limnara's form seemed to shimmer. Earth was one of their final projects. You were given the gift of potential without the burden of ancient memory. You were allowed to develop naturally, to find your own path. So we're an experiment, Leon said flatly. You are children, as are all the precursor-descended species. Some older than others. Some more aware of their heritage, but all connected. That's great and very touching, Autumn said, but it doesn't solve our immediate problem, which is that apparently every major power in the galaxy now wants a piece of humanity, and we showed up to this particular party extremely unprepared. Alarms erupted across the station again. New alarms. Worse alarms. Alarms that suggested someone had stopped asking permission and started taking action. Nalmoth's entire body flashed red. Corporate fleet incoming. They are not requesting docking clearance. They are initiating boarding protocols. Whose fleet? Dr. Ralphix demanded. The Consortium. They're attempting to seize control of the station. Of course they were. The Consortium was the galactic equivalent of if capitalism achieved consciousness and decided ethics were optional. They specialized in acquiring valuable assets through methods that were technically legal if you didn't look too closely at the paperwork. They want to suppress this information, Limnara said. If humanity's precursor heritage becomes public knowledge, it disrupts existing power structures. The Consortium profits from those structures. So they're going to what? Lock us all up and pretend this never happened? Ruth asked. Or worse, Nalmoth said grimly. Claim jurisdiction over humanity as an undeveloped precursor resource, requiring corporate management. Oh, absolutely not, Angela said. I did not spend 6 years in trade negotiations learning to read contract fine print just to get conquered by a cosmic corporation. The station shuddered. Through the laboratory's transparent walls, Autumn could see ships moving into position, sleek corporate vessels bristling with what were definitely not defensive weapons. We need to get to the lower levels, Dr. Ralphix said suddenly. The sealed sections. If the beacon came from there must be something the station is trying to tell us. The sealed sections are sealed for a reason, Nalmoth protested. Yes, and that reason is looking increasingly like it was meant to protect what's down there until the right people arrived. The doctor looked at Autumn, at the other humans. Until you arrived. Another shudder ran through the station, stronger this time. The Consortium fleet was beginning its assault, using what Autumn's limited understanding of space combat suggested were boarding drones and hull cutters. How do we get to the lower levels? She asked. There's a maintenance shaft, Toomey said, pulling up station schematics on her datapad. It bypasses most of the security checkpoints. I use it sometimes when I'm running late and don't want to deal with the main corridors. You use maintenance shafts to avoid being late? Autumn said. I have anxiety about punctuality. I respect that. Nalmoth made a sound like crystal grinding against itself, which Autumn had learned was his species' equivalent of a heavy sigh. If we do this, I am complicit in abandoning my post during a security crisis. If we don't do this, Autumn countered, you're complicit in letting a corporate fleet kidnap an entire species. Which one sounds better on your performance review? He considered this. That is surprisingly logical. I have my moments. They moved as a group, Nalmoth leading, the humans following, Toomey and Dr. Ralphix bringing up the rear with armfuls of scanning equipment they absolutely insisted they needed. The maintenance shaft was exactly as appealing as it sounded. Narrow, dimly lit, and smelling faintly of recycled air and machine oil. I'm getting too old for this, Ruth muttered, squeezing through a particularly tight section. You're getting too old for crawling through maintenance tunnels on a space station during a corporate invasion? Leon asked. Yes, that specifically. They descended 3 levels, then 5, then 8. The architecture changed as they went deeper, becoming older, stranger. The walls shifted from modern composites to materials Autumn didn't recognize, surfaces that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. We're entering the original station structure, Dr. Ralphix said, his voice hushed with reverence. This is pre-modern construction. This is precursor work. The maintenance shaft opened into a corridor that definitely hadn't been built by anyone contemporary. The ceiling soared overhead, far higher than any modern design would require. Symbols covered the walls, flowing scripts in languages that made Autumn's eyes hurt to look at directly. And at the end of the corridor, a door. Massive, sealed, covered in more of those impossible symbols. The door that had been waiting 8 million years for someone to come home. Autumn approached it, and as she got closer, the symbols began to glow. Well, she said, that's probably not ominous at all. The symbols didn't just glow. They pulsed, moving across the door's surface like living things, rearranging themselves into patterns that Autumn's brain insisted were meaningful, even though she had no idea what they meant. Don't touch it, Dr. Ralphix warned. Autumn touched it. The moment her palm made contact with the door, the entire corridor lit up. Not just the symbols on the door, but every surface, every wall, the floor beneath their feet. Light cascaded through circuits and pathways that had been dormant for millions of years, responding to something in her DNA, in her very cells. The door opened, not with a mechanical grinding or hydraulic hiss, but with a sound like reality, taking a deep breath and exhaling. One moment it was closed. The next, it simply wasn't, as if the universe had decided walls were optional. Beyond the door was a chamber. Autumn had expected something grand, maybe a throne room or a vault full of ancient weapons, or possibly a very aggressive welcome message telling them they'd made a terrible mistake. What she got instead was something that looked disturbingly like a museum exhibit mixed with a very advanced waiting room. The space was circular, walls curving upward into a dome that displayed what might have been the night sky, or might have been a map of the universe, or might have been both simultaneously. In the center stood a pedestal, and hovering above it was a sphere of light that hurt to look at directly, and somehow didn't hurt at all. "Is that thing going to explode?" Tommy asked, which Autumn felt was a reasonable question. "I don't think so," Dr. Ralphix said, though he didn't sound entirely certain. He moved closer, scanning equipment extended, and made sounds of discovery that ranged from scientific excitement to what might have been religious ecstasy. Limnara glided into the chamber, their form seeming to resonate with the light. A repository, a message keeper. The precursors left these throughout the galaxy, waiting for their descendants to find them. "What kind of message?" Angela asked. The sphere pulsed, and suddenly information flooded the space around them. Not holographic displays, but something more immediate, more visceral. Knowledge pressed directly into their minds, images and concepts and understanding that bypassed language entirely. Autumn saw civilizations rising and falling. She saw the precursors, not as gods or monsters, but as people, brilliant and flawed, and desperately trying to solve a problem they knew would outlive them. She saw them seeding worlds, encoding their genetics into countless species, hoping that someday, when the universe needed it, their children would be ready. Ready for what? The images didn't say. But the implication was clear. Something was coming. Something the precursors had seen approaching across cosmic timescales. Something their descendants would need to face. "Oh, this just keeps getting better," Autumn muttered, pressing her palms against her eyes as the visions finally stopped. "We're not just random descendants. We're insurance. We're the galaxy's emergency backup plan." "Against what?" Ruth asked, looking pale. That part was conveniently vague. The station shuddered again, more violently than before. Somewhere above them, the Consortium fleet was making progress. Nalmoth's communication device crackled with reports from security teams being overwhelmed, sections being seized, personnel being detained. "We need to move," the security chief said. "If the Consortium reaches this chamber—" "They won't," Toomey said suddenly. The small alien was staring at her datapad, ears standing straight up. "Look at the station systems. They're changing, rewriting themselves. Whatever that sphere activated, it's spreading through the entire structure." She was right. On her screen, Autumn could see code cascading through the station's networks, ancient protocols overwriting modern systems, security measures that had been dormant for millions of years coming back online. The Consortium's progress stopped, then reversed. Their boarding drones simply shut down. Their hull cutters lost power. Their ships began drifting away from the station, propelled by forces their navigation systems couldn't identify. "The station is defending itself," Dr. Ralphix said, watching the displays with something approaching awe. "It recognizes the threat. It's protecting its precursor descendants." Can it do that permanently? Leon asked. Unknown. But it buys us time. The sphere pulsed again, and this time words formed in the air above it. Not in any language Autumn recognized, but she could read them anyway, their meaning translating directly in her mind. Registry updated. Inheritors confirmed. Protocols initiated. What protocols? She asked the sphere, because apparently talking to ancient cosmic artifacts was just her life now. The answer came not in words, but in a new flood of information. Earth's location in the Galactic database had just changed. It was no longer classified as a restricted development world, primitive and unworthy of attention. It was now flagged as a Precursor heritage site, protected under laws so old most current civilizations had forgotten they existed. Laws that, according to what Autumn was understanding, predated and superseded all modern galactic governance. We just got retroactively classified as a protected species, she said slowly. The Consortium can't touch us. Nobody can. Not without violating agreements that were made before their civilizations even existed. Will they respect those laws? Angela asked skeptically. They will if they want to continue existing, Limnara said. Precursor heritage laws are enforced by automated defense systems scattered throughout the galaxy. Systems that make modern militaries look like children with toys. The Remnant Order has spent millennia studying them. We know what happens to those who violate the protections. What happens? Tommy asked. Nothing good, and nothing quickly. The chamber's walls were displaying new information now, maps and star charts, and what looked like a comprehensive database of every precursor-descended species in the galaxy. Humanity was listed, along with 47 other species. Some Autumn recognized, most she didn't. There are others like us, Ruth said, staring at the displays. We're not alone in this. You never were, Limnara replied. The Precursor's legacy is vast. You are simply the most recent to awaken to it. Nalmoth's communication device crackled. Security Chief, this is Station Command. The Consortium fleet is withdrawing. They're claiming the retreat is voluntary, but their ships appear to be experiencing comprehensive systems failures. Also, we're receiving messages from the Galactic Council requesting immediate clarification on what just happened. Tell them, Nalmoth said, looking at Autumn, that the humans have come home. The next several hours were a bureaucratic nightmare of cosmic proportions. The Galactic Council wanted explanations. The Consortium wanted to file complaints. The various delegations that had been competing for access to Autumn and the other humans suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of laws they hadn't known existed. Earth's government, when they were finally contacted and briefed on the situation, had what could charitably be described as a collective panic attack. Humanity had gone from being a barely noticed backwater species to being legally protected inheritors of the most advanced civilization in galactic history, and they had approximately zero preparation for dealing with the implications. Autumn sat in the chamber, watching the chaos unfold on the displays, drinking coffee that Toomey had somehow procured from the station's civilian sectors. How are you feeling? The small alien asked, settling beside her. Honestly, I have no idea. Yesterday, my biggest concern was whether I could afford rent this month. Today, I'm apparently part of a cosmic inheritance scheme spanning millions of years. She took a sip of coffee. The coffee helps. Does it? Not really, but pretending it does is comforting. Dr. Ralphix approached, his scales still glistening with excitement moisture. The repository has granted us access to preliminary archives. There is so much to study, so much to learn. Humanity's genetic markers are just the beginning. Your species carries encoded knowledge, dormant abilities, potential that has barely begun to manifest. Great, Autumn said. Can any of that potential help me pay off my student loans? The doctor blinked, confused. What are student loans? Exactly. Angela joined them, looking exhausted but grimly satisfied. I just got off a call with Earth's Trade Commission. Apparently, our new status means existing trade agreements need to be renegotiated. We've got leverage now. Real leverage. The Consortium is going to hate that. Good, Autumn said. They tried to kidnap us. They deserve to hate it. The sphere in the center of the chamber pulsed gently, its light steady and calm. According to the information it had provided, there were thousands of these repositories scattered across the galaxy, waiting for Precursor descendants to find them. Each one contained knowledge, tools, and guidance for species ready to claim their inheritance. IDI had just found their first one. There would be more. And with each discovery, they would understand more about what they were, where they came from, and what they were meant to become. So, what happens now? Toomey asked. Autumn looked at the other humans scattered around the chamber. Ordinary people caught up in extraordinary circumstances, already adapting, because that's what humans did. Now, she said, now we figure out what comes next. Together. The sphere pulsed in what might have been approval.